For decades, an organization controlling a multi-billion-dollar global entertainment empire operated with the exact same legal oversight as a local community chess club. The sheer scale of its economic footprint was entirely mismatched with its regulatory environment, creating a sanctuary where financial accountability was virtually non-existent. This structural mismatch allowed a small group of executives to orchestrate one of the most extensive and enduring financial schemes in modern history. The Fédération Internationale de Football Association, universally known as FIFA, serves as the ultimate governing body of world football. Its primary function is to organize international sporting competitions, most notably the men's and women's World Cup tournaments. These events generate massive global viewership, drawing billions of fans and generating unprecedented commercial revenue every 4 years through broadcasting rights, corporate sponsorships, and extensive merchandising agreements. Despite managing these staggering sums and negotiating with sovereign governments, the organization was legally structured as a non-profit association under Swiss law. This specific legal classification was originally intended for small charities, hobby groups, and local community organizations. It was never designed to regulate a multinational economic powerhouse responsible for orchestrating massive global infrastructure projects and distributing billions of dollars across international borders. This unique legal status provided a profound and durable shield against standard corporate transparency requirements. Unlike publicly traded companies, there were no independent shareholders demanding rigorous external audits and no federal securities regulators scrutinizing quarterly financial disclosures. The organization was essentially a closed loop, free to manage its vast wealth without the fiduciary responsibilities or public reporting standards expected of a corporation of its size. The financial stakes changed dramatically and permanently in the late 20th century. As satellite TV expanded and global brands sought international exposure, the broadcast and marketing rights for these sporting events transformed. They shifted from modest supplementary revenue streams into fiercely contested, multi-billion-dollar commodities, flooding the organization's coffers with unprecedented levels of untethered cash and transforming its executives into global power brokers. This sudden influx of massive capital flowed directly into a governance structure that had barely evolved since the organization's founding in the early 1900s. Ultimate decision-making power was concentrated almost entirely within an executive committee, a highly exclusive group consisting of just 24 individuals. This archaic structure meant that billions of dollars in commercial value were controlled by a room small enough to fit around a single conference table. This small, insulated council acted as an absolute bottleneck for the world's most lucrative sports contracts. If a sovereign nation wanted the economic boost and international prestige of hosting a tournament, or a multinational corporation wanted to broadcast one, they had to win the personal favor of these specific 24 people. The system created immense leverage for the committee members, who held the keys to unmatched global exposure. For a significant portion of the organization's history, these executive committee members were technically classified as unpaid volunteers, instead of transparent, market-rate corporate salaries. They were compensated through lavish expense accounts, generous daily stipends, and an unwritten system of patronage. This arrangement thoroughly blurred the line between official business and personal enrichment, incentivizing executives to extract value through alternative, often illicit, channels. The broader organizational architecture further incentivized aggressive political maneuvering over sound financial management. The global body was composed of regional confederations and national associations, operating under a strict one country, one vote system in the General Assembly. This meant that strategic decisions and presidential elections were decided by a simple majority regardless of a nation's size, economic output, or actual footballing infrastructure. Under this democratic facade, the vote of a massive, football-obsessed European nation carried the exact same weight as the vote of a tiny island territory with barely a functioning domestic league. This voting parity meant that whoever controlled the central distribution of development funds could essentially purchase regional voting blocks, ensuring their own political survival by directing money to smaller nations whose votes were easier to secure. Under the prolonged leadership of figures like Sepp Blatter, this dynamic was perfected into a precise administrative art form. Financial assistance programs, ostensibly designed to build stadiums and training facilities in developing nations, were frequently leveraged to secure political loyalty. By strategically distributing these funds, leadership could maintain absolute control over the presidency, creating an entrenched patronage network that actively resisted any structural reform. When allegations of financial impropriety inevitably surfaced, the organization relied entirely on self-governance to address them. Internal ethics committees were established to project an image of probity and responsible oversight. However, the members of these supposedly independent committees were appointed, funded, and ultimately controlled by the very executives they were tasked with investigating, ensuring that true accountability remained structurally impossible. This closed loop of accountability became glaringly obvious during the highly competitive World Cup bidding process. Nations spending millions of taxpayer dollars competing for the right to host the tournament quickly realized a harsh truth. Official technical presentations, detailed infrastructure reports, and economic impact studies meant very little to the final outcome when the decision rested entirely in the hands of the executive committee. The actual decisions were frequently negotiated in private hotel suites and exclusive dinners, where committee members could quietly demand personal favors. Host nations bore the massive infrastructural costs and long-term public debt of building stadiums, while the governing body extracted the tax-free revenue. Meanwhile, individual executives secured lucrative side deals, consulting fees, and infrastructure investments for their own regional allies. A nearly identical dynamic governed the opaque sale of international marketing and television rights. In a notorious and well-documented case involving a sports marketing firm, executives routinely received millions of dollars in offshore kickback. These illicit payments were provided simply for signing over lucrative broadcast contracts at significantly below market rates, effectively transferring wealth from the organization to the individual decision-makers. In this environment, bribery was not an anomaly, a rogue action by a few bad actors, or a temporary breakdown of the rules. It became the standard operating procedure, functioning as an unofficial tax. It was a strictly enforced barrier to entry for any corporation or nation wishing to participate in the lucrative global football economy, deeply embedding corruption into the organizational culture. For years, Swiss authorities showed remarkably little interest in intervening or updating their oversight laws to match the organization's massive economic footprint. Because the entity was a private association, and the alleged bribery often occurred outside of Switzerland involving foreign nationals, local prosecutors lacked both the legal framework and the political will to act. The regulatory environment effectively provided a safe harbor for systemic financial misconduct. The tipping point for this unchecked system arrived with the unprecedented and highly controversial decision to award 2 consecutive tournaments at the exact same time. By simultaneously auctioning the 2018 and 2022 events, the executive committee created a frantic high-stakes frenzy of vote trading and backroom deals. The scale of the collusion was so massive that it finally proved impossible to conceal from the outside world. The sheer volume of capital moving through the global financial system to secure these dual bids finally caught the attention of international tax authorities and federal investigators. The very same wire transfer networks and offshore shell companies used to launder money for international syndicates were being utilized to route illicit payments to football executives, triggering a sweeping cross-border legal response. The subsequent wave of coordinated international indictments shattered the long-standing illusion that a global institution of this size could effectively police itself. The catastrophic failure of self-governance demonstrated a clear principle. When massive economic power is paired with structural opacity, unchecked authority, and zero external oversight, institutional corruption ceases to be a risk and becomes an inevitable mathematical outcome. The anatomy of this sprawling scandal reveals how easily regulatory arbitrage can be exploited by sophisticated actors, by operating in the gray space between national jurisdictions and leveraging the immense cultural goodwill of a beloved sport. An organization can build a financial empire almost entirely insulated from consequence. It serves as a masterclass in how poorly designed corporate governance can systematically enable global fraud, because understanding why it happened is the best way to recognize it happening again. If you enjoy breaking down the incentives, decisions, and systems behind corporate scandals, not just the headlines, subscribe for new investigations every week, because understanding why it happened is the best way to recognize it happening again.